Right. Okay. So, um, yeah, let me think. I got to get started here, guys. All right. Today is Memorial Day, and I'm just going to take a little bit of time here before I go on to other things to not only remember the fallen for Memorial Day, but in a way, I want to talk about survivors, for lack of a better term. But there are survivors who have carried consequences for their service, even if they, quote, survived. Where would I want to start with this? I'm thinking of a particular individual who I will not name, who served as a nuclear power engineer in the Navy. And my glasses, oh, that looks cute. Anyway, served, let's see here, 8 years and was around nuclear power reactors all that time. Now, mind you, that there were standards for exposure to radiation. You had the little dosimeter badge, you're always following up on you. That may have served to, quote, mitigate the risk, but I don't think that it would in any sense eliminate any risk. So this individual, around the age of 45 or so, I think, developed leukemia. It stands to reason that if you're exposed to radiation, your risk of a condition like leukemia goes up. And I think in his case, he was unfortunate. However, it was the mildest. There is such a thing as a mild form of leukemia, and that was the one that he has had to deal with ever since. It certainly affected his life going forward, long after he left the Navy. It affected his wife. It affected his career choices. And, you can say on the one hand, it was an honorable thing to do. But on the other hand, you got to stop and ask yourself, you know, what what is the relationship between your decision to serve this country and then have consequences that you carry for the rest of your life? So he's just one example. Obviously, the people who suffer PTSD is another huge example. What do you do with that? I was just listening to these stories of the unusually high number of suicides among um, people who were in the military. Two cases where it's like a cry for help. These gentlemen who were really not getting the help they needed committed suicide right on the steps of the VA. So this becomes another part of a discussion about how do you look at, what kind of perspective do you bring to the people who served, left, but never really left. And they carry these things with them. So thankfully, under President Trump, I think there's been a greater push to be more cognizant of the needs of ex-military people, what they've had to deal with. Um, there's is a excuse me. There's is a peculiar situation because they remember their friends who died, and and here they are, sort of like a type of walking wounded for the rest of their life. So I think it's reasonable to look upon them as having a double burden. Yeah. So how do we remember that? I guess the best we can do is just remember it. I can think of my guys that I know who served. I'll certainly be talking to them. The thing that I find hard to understand, though, is how you still have people who have no problem spitting on them. The hate America types, the types who just see the military in purely evil terms. There's a story of a high school where the administration would not allow the awarding of scholarships to the graduates because the scholarships were military scholarships. So you find yourself with these people who really are ignorant about what it means to serve in the military and what comes with it and what comes after it, and then to have that kind of attitude carry on. I don't know, but I think there is some sense of gratitude, I guess, to be felt, knowing that as I've been driving the roads, you've seen the flags out there getting ready to celebrate Memorial Day. The weather may not be the best, but that doesn't matter. So yeah, and the guys will bump into each other and will remember our time. So I was in the Navy as a quartermaster, 2 years active, 3 years reserve. And my family served. My father was in World War II. My uncle was in World War II. My brother was in the Navy as well. And see here, it lets me post in the channel just digits. Okay, that's great. Yeah. So Memorial Day is but one day, and as one person had observed, the sacrifices that were made, for example, by the men in the Pacific, were crucial to having created what we'll think of as conditions for peace for what's some 80 years now, hopefully somewhat longer, only to have, China repeating what Japan did in the 1930s in terms of taking islands. Now, we've been pushing back somewhat, but in my opinion, not enough. So it's, and so where these 2 points in history meet, which is quite remarkable, is I believe one of the islands is Tarawa, which was, there were at least two battles on Tarawa in World War II. The point is that there are still dead Americans buried in various ways on Tarawa, or it's the wrong island. There's an island in which the communist Chinese have essentially taken over. And Americans have been there working to recover American bodies even to this day, and the communist Chinese won't let them do it. They won't issue the work permits to let them do this work. That's quite extraordinary, quite annoying, and you know what? It's a harbinger for something we don't want to talk about, as we may find ourselves looking at. That's right, a war with China, because they're doing all the right things in order to set it up. It's just will they be able to pull it off? That's, quote, another question. Anyway, so what else do I have to say about this? We've seen this country go through considerable changes. And I'm thinking specifically of the hate towards the military after the Vietnam War. And I would say it wasn't until, boy, that's a strange thing to say, Desert Shield or Desert Storm, that we began to see a recovery of respect for the military. And we've seen since then a much more focused effort to keep reminding Americans to remember the sacrifices that people in the military make. And it's quite a list. It's not just that you're going to make yourself available to wherever you need to be sent at a given time. It's the risk that you're putting yourself under. You're putting yourself in, quite frankly, dangerous environments, but just by the way they are. And then there's a hard part here to talk about, and that is that sometimes, despite best efforts, the planning doesn't go so well. Just to not so randomly, recall the story of what happened in the desert of Iran under Carter for what was called Operation Eagle Claw, and how when the report finally came out, I mean, the public simply knew that helicopters collided, crashed, and burned, and 8 men died. That's all they know. What wasn't known at the time was what led up to it, and what led up to it was pretty unbelievable. I mean, there were 10,000 reasons why this mission should have failed sooner. So many bad things that happened, accidents along the way, equipment failure along the way. Just astonishing. So it's a credit to the men who were in this mission that they didn't quit. But sometimes you have to recognize when it's not working. In any event, um, yeah, so I'm remembering that because I just watched that recently, and it's a commentary not only on the risks that that men take in these situations, but the how should I say, the flawed approach that you can have sometimes. I mean, at least you can say that the military makes an effort to learn from its mistakes. Yeah. So um, now, though, as we fast forward, all these things that we look at in terms of Memorial Day, now we're confronted with something that might be a little bit discomforting, and that is what to do about Iran. Already we've lost, what was it, 13, 19 men and women um, from the attacks in March. So, and now we're confronted with having to go back again, and this time maybe put boots on the ground. Yeah, I think it stands to reason that more Americans are going to die as a result of this, and a lot of other people, most of them innocent. It's a horrible situation to be confronted with. So my sympathies go to President Trump as he tries to navigate this. Yeah, we'll just say it. Peace is better than war, obviously, on this Memorial Day. But there are times when you don't have a choice. I'm not going to editorialize about Iran at this point. Yeah. Anyway, I think I'm going to call it here, guys. So thanks for listening.